Hey internet, sorry if the audio on this one's a bit interesting. I'm currently sitting in my closet to record this, which we're not going to think about the implications of too hard. So today, in loose terms, I'm going to be walking you through how I made my Roman and Remus Saunders cosplays. This is the first time I've ever hand sewn cosplays, and obviously, out of the show, I had to choose the two characters with the most complicated outfits, but nonetheless. For the bases, I started with button-up shirts with black for Remus and white for Roman, of course. Originally, I wanted to use a prince costume for Roman's base, but even the costume store didn't provide for that want, so I ended up going with the alternative instead, and that worked out fine. Obviously, I had to have some sick beats to listen to during my sewing. My first order of business was removing the buttons and the breast pockets and sewing up the fronts of the shirts. I did Remus's first and I had to redo it a couple of times since it was uneven the first few times, but I got there in the end. And I remember I was very slow with it compared to the speed that I can sew at now after all of the practice of, you know, having to do this in a few months. I used needles to hold things in place since I didn't have sewing pins, but don't do that at home. I pricked myself multiple times and that's not fun. Along with the fronts, I also had to cut off the sleeves of Remus's button-up due to how I planned to do his outfit, and I ended up taking in the sides of Roman's due to the sizing. Once the bases were ready, I needed to figure out a way to do all of the embellishments that would actually make these guys recognizable, and trust me, they have a lot of embellishments. They're both dramatic bitches. And I love that. I'm saying that in the best way possible. So I decided to buy Fabric Fusion. I had never used it before and I heard good things about it. And I had a few lengths of gold trimming that I was able to find that were pretty much identical to the ones on Roman's outfit in the show. So I cut them to size and lined them up carefully, and the Fabric Fusion works super well for that. However, I did forget to have a window open and accidentally gave myself a sore throat, so make sure to not do what I did. I also made sure to go over it and check that it was all attached properly, and then I used another trimming, sew into the first trimming for the neck, and used a second trimming for the cuffs. Are you following this? Because I'm the one saying it and I am barely following it. I ended up having to go back and sew on the neck and cuffs due to Fabric Fusion not holding those particular bits well, which was unfortunate but was a learning experience. Remus has a similar trimming to Roman on his outfit, but I want to do the sequins on his front first because the trimming sort of goes over it. Now I decided to use Fabric Fusion for this, but if I could go back I would just sew the sequins on instead, despite the extra effort, because I didn't like the way the Fabric Fusion dried on the black fabric. But it wasn't noticeable in the final product, and that's more of a creator's gripe than anything else major. I used this black curtainy length as my source of the sequins and just cut them to be the length I needed. And once I had those securely glued on and dried, I sewed together this lacy green trimming and the silver shiny one to properly get this silver shimmery effect, and began to Fabric Fusion them to the outfit. And apparently I also had to show off the Doctor Who that I was watching, so thanks past me, that's great. And then came the troublesome, horrible, terrible, nasty, worst thing I've ever dealt with ordeal of sewing Remus's upper sleeves. He's got these poofy, dramatic things, and it gave me so much trouble. I had to sew the sequins to the mesh, then sew the mesh to this green shimmery fabric to get the look I wanted. And then this is the bit that gave me the real trouble. I had to sew elastic into the sleeves to get them to poof properly. And oh my goodness, it gave me so much trouble that I had to buy more of the green fabric. I wasn't able to get the same color that I wanted initially, so I ended up with more of an olive green than the emerald green that I wanted. I think that it took me about 3 attempts to get these sleeves correct, and let me tell you that if I ever need to sew fabric again with elastic, I may lose my marbles because it made me legitimately rage quit sewing at least one point. It was such a nightmare. Roman's shoulders, on the other hand, were simple. I used an old pillowcase for the white parts, and then all I had to do was sew the last of the trimming around the edges and add a gold button from a craft store for each one. So at least he didn't give me nearly as much drama when I was getting so close to the convention. This was around the point that I was filming a lot less because I was so focused on getting things ready in time for the convention, which was at the end of October. So I finally got the poofy parts of Remus's sleeves done. What about the rest of his arms? My answer to that was those long sleeve winter thermals. The arms cling close enough that I just cut those out of one that I got pretty cheaply because winter had come to a close by then, and I sewed those into the poofy parts, and voila. After that I began to use black fabric to make the rest of his sleeve detailing. The tops of his shoulders with sequins and this weird glittery green stuff from the craft store, and random shiny black stuff and an eye and a flower obviously, because that's such a good detail. Come on, he has so many good details on his outfit. I used green fabric on the edges that was rescued from my original poofy sleeve attempts, and I also used that and this weird green stuff for the wrists. At this point I'm also looking for places that can print patches so I can sew the emblems onto Roman's shoulders, and you know, one for Remus's butt, which is where his emblem canonically is. I didn't make the decision, and I realized, shit, everywhere I can find only sells in bulk for expensive prices, and I only need 3 of these things. So I get down to the fabric store and I buy an embroidery hoop and some thread, and I start taking it with me on public transport to everywhere I'm going that month, and working on it tirelessly, or maybe tiredly, at home in my every spare second. And this is maybe a week or two before the con, and I finally get them finished the day before the con starts, which was a massive relief. My other last minute addition, which was way less stressful for both my brain and my hands, was that no matter how hard I looked after buying a plastic katana for a Roman prop, I could not find a plastic Morningstar anywhere, despite Halloween coming up. I ended up getting a foam ball, some foam stars, a Dremel, and a toothpick. A toothpick. Why have I written down a toothpick in my notes? I got a pack of toothpicks. I got more than one toothpick. The stars I cut to be the spikes, used the toothpicks and glue to hold them into the ball, and used the Dremel as the handle and painted it all, and there it was. Perfect weapon to attack my brother with. I do have a photo of me attacking my brother with it, but I won't add that here for privacy. Thus ends my epic journey of Con Crunch. I won't lie, there's definitely some TLC I need to do on these costumes due to how much I had to rush to get them done, and there's some things I need to add to them, like redoing Roman's front to have that sort of armor-looking piece he has in the series to make it more accurate, but I am really proud of what I accomplished here. And these were my first time going on the cosplay stage alone, which was crazy exhilarating, even if I'm getting a bit more used to it after a few times. I guess the moral of the story is go into a project that's way out of your level with sheer dumb confidence and make it work.